All right, so today is Monday, February 27th, 2 p.m. section. Recording is on. So today we're going to primarily cover lecture note 4. So if you want to grab that, it should be in the ELMS materials. But the idea is that for this lecture note, last week, you should have done the economic statement conversion, started that process, and I'm going to post a solution later today so you can kind of check your work on the solution, and I'll give you a couple more practice problems on it. But today, what I wanted to primarily focus on is once we've kind of converted the statements, how do we analyze them? What are the approaches to thinking about the analysis and what they tell us what to do, all right? But before I start, was there any questions about the conversion? Just general quick questions. As I said, I'll post a solution in terms of what you were doing. All right. Again, if they come up later, feel free to ask. But as I said, I will put up a conversion solution, give you some additional practices, because I'll alert you that really a lot of the midterm exam is basically going to be converting statements. Okay, so what you did last week, you're going to have to do again in an exam in a couple weeks' time. So just giving everybody a heads up on that one. All right, so talking about lecture note 4. All right, so here's the idea. When we look at historical analysis, there's two types of historical analysis we're going to focus on. All right. One is a better understanding of return on invested capital, and to do so, we're going to break ROIC down into what's called a tree. So we're going to build ROIC trees. Now, the ROIC trees that I'm going to show you today, in the third section of the class, we're going to build a valuation model, and the valuation model will auto-generate these ROIC trees. Right? So if you wonder where they're coming from, you don't have to put them together by hand. The model kind of puts them together for you. Okay? So today is really an understanding of that. The other converted statement that we're going to look at is that of CFI, right, cash flow. So those are the two statements that we're going to focus on when we look at the past. And the idea is, I said before, you can't drive a car looking in the rearview mirror, right? So the problem with the past is it doesn't always repeat itself. We've got to be very careful about that. But we are eventually going to be predicting a future, so we need a baseline. Kind of know where the company has been to set up that baseline so that we can then project into the future. But again, we've got to be very careful because the future doesn't look like the past, then that's going to cause us some problems when we're looking backwards. Okay, so for example, if you're looking in the airline industry through 2019, it looks a lot different than in 2020, 21, and it's probably going to look a lot different in 23, 24 as the industry has recovered. Okay, so if we kind of look at the last 5 years and we include COVID in that 5-year period of time, you're going to see the industry falling off a cliff and recovering. Okay, so we've got to be very careful about, well, it doesn't mean that every 3 years it falls off a cliff. All right, so that was kind of a unique 1 in a 100-year event, but nonetheless, we've got to be very careful when we look at the past. Right, so first thing is that when we look at return on invested capital, the first thing I want you to understand is that anytime you're trying to explain return on invested capital, there are 3 drivers of ROIC. Always 3 drivers. These 3 things will explain for any company its ROIC and its change in ROIC. All right? The first driver is tax rate. Okay? Because we are looking at after-tax profits and cash flows, so therefore tax rate will affect ROIC. After we take out taxes, we're going to look at the pre-tax performance of the business, and there are 2 drivers of the pre-tax performance of the business. One off the income statement is called your operating margin, or EBIT margin, so we just have a bunch of non-operating items in there. Okay? And then the other one is what we're going to call productivity or efficiency, and so you can think of your margin as how much. Okay? So the idea is, how much do I make when I sell something? Right? You can think of productivity as how much do I have to spend to generate those sales. Okay? And so those are going to be the 2 things forgot to plug into the main screen here.